Tailings ponds. When the oil is separated from the sand using hot water, the leftover sand and clays are piped into giant holding bays. Residual bitumen and chemicals leave an oily surface that is toxic to animals. Sound cannons and scarecrows are used to scare away birds. Tailings ponds have been the biggest environmental eyesore of the oil sands industry and have more than tripled in size since 2005, taking up approximately 176 square kilometers of boreal forest. They are projected to grow another 40% in the next 20 years. Environmentalists and northern residents fear toxic wastewater is leaking into water systems like the Athabasca River. Reclamation has always been a goal of the oil sands companies. Suncor drained their oldest tailings pond and covered it in soil for revegetation. But in 2008, when 1,600 ducks died in a Syncrude pond and international headlines were made, oil sands companies and the Alberta Energy Regulator stepped up their game. In 2009, the provincial regulator came up with ambitious goals for companies to reduce their tailings pond size. This was called Directive 74. But 4 years later, the regulator backed off Directive 74 after no company had managed to meet the new standards. It also decided no one would be penalized for missing their targets, which were considered too ambitious. Companies have spent hundreds of millions of dollars in new technologies and techniques, like using polymer flocculants to help separate the tailings from the water. Syncrude says it plans to build a $3 billion centrifuge to spin the tailings and remove the water. There is also a more controversial solution: end pit lakes. The idea with an end pit lake is to put a freshwater cap on top of the tailings pond. In theory, the clean water won't mix with the tailings, and bacteria will eventually consume the toxic materials at the bottom. This process is considered cheaper than restoring soil and trees and is now being tested in commercial scale. Oil sands companies have submitted plans to build about 30 artificial end pit lakes over the next 50 years. It will likely take decades to see if they actually result in clean water or whether they become long-term toxic storage, as critics fear.